welcome back to Rod Reacts, everything in India. Are you having a good day? Hopefully you're having a positive day. Let me know down below. For now, we're going to check out a requested video, and this is why are Hindu gods so human? So this should be pretty interesting. Let's check it out. Let's see what they have to say. I'm super curious on the title and what's going to be explained. So let's go ahead and do this.
When we look at the pastimes of the Hindu gods, they end up displaying the most fallible and human of qualities. The child Krishna runs away in fear from his mother Yashoda after breaking pots and eating butter.
Right.
When Sita is kidnapped by Ravana, Lord Ram is utterly distraught and weeps. When he wishes to rescue her, he needs the help of monkeys to build a bridge and fight for him. Hindus are generally very comfortable with the idea that God can be intensely human in appearance and behavior.
I never really thought about it like that, how human-like they are in a lot of the stories. I never really thought about that. That just put that thought in my mind.
But they can often struggle to answer questions about it from those who don't. Christians and Muslims in particular can often be left surprised and confused when they hear about the deeds of the Hindu deities. God is meant to be all-powerful and needs nothing from anyone. And if that is the case, why does he have so many flaws?
I started thinking, how can such character of Ram, Sita, Lakshman, all this be a god? How can I agree that they are gods? When they are not able to save their own family and themselves, how will they save me and my family? You know, if God cannot know what are the evil plans done by the villains and the evil people, how will he know what's happening in the world?
You know what? I think those are good questions. Those are questions, you know, a lot of us are going to ask. Why wouldn't we ask that? Because, like he's saying, you know, when the majority of the world looks for God, and when they look for God, they look for an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-answering God, you know. They don't expect God to struggle with issues. So I have a, you know, those questions are good questions.
To correct this misunderstanding, we need to get right to the root of the problem. Those Christians and Muslims who believe their religion is the only way to truth follow a salvation theology,
yes,
and they see everything as leading to a coming apocalypse. There are stories in their scripture of different prophets and saviors warning us about the coming end times. According to these stories, there is a day of judgment approaching and we need to be ready. Hindus, however, have no idea of an apocalypse. There is no final day of judgment. Instead, Hindus have the concept of Leela. Leela means divine play. It is where God, the supreme reality, takes on limitation for the endearment of his devotees. Whereas those who follow a salvation theology are looking to survive God, Hindus are looking to evolve and actually experience God. Apocalypse.
And I believe we should experience God. I mean, all of us should strive to experience God, right? Not just know God, but experience God. I mean, who could argue with that? I don't think anybody could argue with you want to experience God. I don't think, no matter which religion that you believe in or follow, I think all of us can say we want to experience God. Why wouldn't we?
Is built on the idea that we have one life and the end of the world is coming. Life is like a football match. There is a limited time where the winners go to heaven and the losers are condemned. There is an urgency for everyone to jump on board and believe the right thing.
And I got a little story for you right now. Speaking of heaven and hell, obviously I'm from the United States. I was brought up in a Baptist church, so a Christian church. I've since left, but you know, one of the reasons why I left and why I struggle with believing what Christians believe, I'm gonna let you in on a little not a secret, but a story from my past. So I was studying the Bible hard, New Testament, Old Testament, the whole Bible, because you know it should be important, right? You know, if you're following Christianity and you're believing in it, and you should want to know Old and New Testament, right? So I have questions curious minds have questions, kind of like I'm learning about Hinduism. I have a million questions. Well, when I'm learning about Christianity years ago, I have a million questions. So after a sermon one day, I went up to the preacher. I was like, I got a question. Something doesn't make sense to me. And I said, you stand up here and you preach, one day they stand up here and they preach, you die, you automatically get judged. You go to heaven or hell. When we have a funeral service, you'll stand up here and tell the family, I know they're in heaven, I know they're in heaven, which we shouldn't be judging, As a Christian, you shouldn't be judging if they're going to heaven or hell, because that's not who you decide. You're not the one deciding. That's not my question. My question was a story in the Bible. And in the story, there's a man named Lazarus. I don't know if you know the story. Most of you probably don't. Some of you might. Well, Lazarus died in Bible times. So, if he died, and the way my preacher's preaching, because he stands up there and says, this person died, but I know he's in heaven. Well, Lazarus died in the Bible story. And I said, this makes no sense to me, because Lazarus died in the Bible story, and 3 days later in the story, Jesus resurrects him. He's alive again. He was once dead, now he's not. Well, if he's such a good man, and he died, and you're preached when you die, you either go to heaven or hell. You don't sit in your grave, you either go ahead of heaven or hell. So if Lazarus died and went to heaven, why would Jesus rip Lazarus out of heaven and bring him back down to earth? Why would he do that? That makes no sense to me. And basically the preacher kind of stumbled upon his words. He really couldn't answer it. He kind of smirked and gave a little laugh, and he said, well, Lazarus was in a thing called purgatory. Well, purgatory is something that's taught in Catholicism, not Christianity. So he's putting, because Catholic and Christianity are not the same thing. They are totally different. I don't know. Or I do know, they're not the same. And he's mashing this stuff together and just making up an answer, and he can't answer it to me. And this is the guy, I'm going to church and listening to, and he's supposed to be teaching me, and he's laughing at me, and he can't answer it because there is no answer. It does not make no sense. Why would you die? Why would you live your life, follow all the rules, believe, have faith, end up in heaven and get ripped out? That makes no sense to me. And that's a big time story that Christians teach. And it puts me off. I actually quit going to that church. I quit going to the Christian church altogether, because something's off there. It makes zero sense to me. And why would you want to follow a God if you've lived your life, you did the death thing, you end up in heaven and get ripped right back out to be put right back on this earth? That just makes zero sense to me. I've had a million other questions that can't be answered either by trained pastors supposed to guide you in the right way. So that's one of my problems with Christianity. I just wanted to share that story with you. I don't know if you're still watching. I don't know if any of it made sense. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Lazarus story. But what do you think? But let's go back to this video.
Hindu Leela, however, is founded on the individual evolving over many lives to realize their relationship with God. Unlike Christianity and Islam, time is not linear with a final end of the world. It is an eternal cyclic process where souls and material nature are repeatedly projected out into existence and then withdrawn. Hinduism is not like a football match, but more like the making of a beautiful painting. There are no winners and losers, but there is a gradual manifestation of our connection with the divine.
Right.
During the various Leelas described in Hinduism, God is intensely human. He becomes like us so that on some level we can understand and relate to him. Through his deeds and pastimes, we gain an insight into his personality, and we have the possibility of building a deep, intimate connection with him. Simple descriptions of God's mercy have a limitation, but actually seeing him physically in action with others demonstrates who he is to us. Hindus obviously understand that God needs no one's help, but in the Ramayana, for example, the abduction of Sita shows us the example of devotees around Lord Ram. When we hear about how the monkeys and Hanuman served Ram perfectly in every situation, we realize in ourselves what it is to be a servant of God.
Right. It makes you want to serve perfectly, or at least attempt to serve perfectly. We might not serve perfectly the first time, but if we keep trying and have the desire to, we should want to desire that, right? I see.
We understand what it is to sacrifice and deliver selflessly for a higher cause. God's apparent difficulty allows us to engage and participate with him. The Bhagavad Purana is a scripture which is filled with endless leelas. In the 10th book, it constantly describes the deeds of the all-attractive persona, Krishna. On one hand, we hear about the mischievous thief who steals butter and even eats mud. The next, we are told about how this very same child shows his mother the whole universe in his mouth. Again and again, the Bhagavatam shows the sweet and endearing humanness of Krishna, and then contrasts it with Krishna as the ultimate, all-powerful Supreme Lord. Leela is all about God willingly drawing us into a relationship with him, and then through that relationship, making us perceive his glory. God in Hinduism does not want to be feared, he wants to be known. He wants to give us the highest joy of loving him. This is why we can have different relationships with him. This is the reason why Krishna is the dear friend of the cowherds.
Right.
Why he is adored as the valiant hero that slays demons. And why he is the lover of the gopis.
He's all of it. He's all.
God taking on limitation and even appearing vulnerable, we are given different portals of access to know him on a deeper level. Krishna needs nothing, but he engages in Leela for our sake. To experience the truth of God in all his majesty is too difficult for the mind to take. In chapter 11 of the Gita, Arjuna is shocked at the reality of Krishna's cosmic form, and he prays in desperation. After seeing this universal form which I have never seen before, I am gladdened, but at the same time my mind is disturbed with fear. Therefore please bestow your grace upon me and reveal again that other form, O Lord of the universe. The full manifestation of divinity does not inspire intimacy and love, but rather awe and fear. Our mind, which belongs to this physical world, cannot tolerate its magnificence. This is why God takes on a form. The important thing to realize is that although the relationships with Krishna are described in human terms, they are actually divine. The devotees around Krishna are utterly surrendered to him. When we read about the different events, we see how they have given up their own will, how their hearts and minds are entirely absorbed in him. Leela is as much about the perfected devotees as it is about God himself. Meditation and contemplation on these Leelas purifies us. It causes us in some way to enter into that same Leela with the Lord himself.
That's powerful.
And as this happens, the Lord's deeds become the reality of the relationship we are looking to achieve. Mainstream Islam has no real concept of Leela, since it is entirely blasphemous for God to take on any form. In fact, for many Muslims, it would be considered the worst of all sins.
Wow.
But one could argue that the story of Jesus is a Leela, since it is God who has taken on a limitation for the benefit of mankind. There is some truth in this, in that the personality of God becomes revealed through the actions of Christ. His compassion and love for humanity shows God's love for this world. From this point of view, one can draw a number of parallels with the Bhakti traditions of Hinduism. But, so long as a Christian believes Christ is the only way, then the emphasis on Christ's life is based more on an apocalyptic scenario than on Hindu Leela.
Right.
Because for them, the
Makes
advent
sense.
of Christ is more about being saved from damnation than realizing his love.
Right.
What makes this idea of Leela
true.
so profound is that it accepts the paradox of God, who is unknowable, omnipresent, and all-powerful, existing simultaneously in a material, limited form. Any tradition which accepts the notion of the Avatar, where the Lord incarnates in form, is always filled with mysticism and produces various saints who have attained spiritual heights. Seeing the unlimited in the limited and the infinite in the finite naturally opens the door to a deeper spiritual perspective. Leela is all about God crossing down, taking on a name and form, walking and talking like us so that we can aspire to know Him. Seeing the outside display of the qualities of God and His devotees awakens these same qualities within. This is how surrender, grace and love grow inside us. This is why Hinduism treasures these Leelas in songs, poetry and performances. Whatever we give attention to becomes stronger, and by worshipping these Leelas we humble ourselves, allowing their reality to govern our life. Krishna states, "I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my power of illusion, my yoga maya, and so the deluded world knows me not as the unborn and infallible." To those who do not have the depth of perception, they judge the Leelas of Hinduism in the most shallow and ignorant of ways.
And that's true, you know. I've done it myself, because when I didn't know anything about Hinduism, it looked a little weird. But now that I think of it, you know, Christianity is weird. Islam is weird. I mean, if you're an outsider looking in, yes. But I like the fact of Leela and getting to be able to know God instead of more like, for instance, in Christianity, you fear God. You know, you don't want to end in hell. You want, and I've been in sermons where they did the fire and brimstone sermons where it was all about you're going to end in hell, 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 so you got to go the other way. And that's who wants to follow that? Who wants to believe in that? Who wants to believe in a God, an all-knowing God, as far as, you know, what they say as a Christian, all-knowing God? Why would He create you and supposedly know everything and already know the future and know He created these, you know, these life forms to where, you know, the majority of them are going to end in hell? That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me, you know. But this Leela, it makes sense to me. It makes sense. You know, God created us, and, you know, we should want to know God, not fear God, right? In the end, we want to end up with God. Maybe it takes a bunch of lifetimes to end that way, but you end that way is what counts, right?
They are unable to perceive the divinity that lies behind them. The mind and normal physical eyes bound to this world cannot know God. Before Arjuna is able to see Krishna's cosmic form on the battlefield, he is blessed by him to have divine eyes. In the same way, all spiritual practice in Hinduism is designed to attain these divine eyes. Once we have them, we will understand the truth behind the divine Leelas of the Lord. We will see that there is a loving God who is longing to know us, even more than we are longing to know Him. Many thanks for listening.
That was actually an awesome video. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It brought up things from my past that, you know, I want to share. I want to get off my chest. I want to put it in a video. I want people to see. I want people to hear what I've said. And I learned, and I'm learning. You know, I'm learning. You know, because of Leela and why Hindu gods are so human sometimes. We get to be able to know God, and ultimately, don't you want to know God? I do. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Those are my feelings. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? Comment down below and let me know. But for now, I'll see you next time. Please stay positive. Peace.